Hello, everyone. My name is Alexa Duncan. I am a librarian in Buncombe County, and today I'm going to talk to you about some job hunting skills and resources. So we know that right now a lot of people are out of work and looking for jobs, so hopefully this will be a helpful resource for right now, but also that it will be helpful to folks continuing into the future. So I'm going to start out by talking about several job websites, several ways to find jobs, and then we're going to talk about filling out job applications, and finally we're going to talk a little bit about resumes. So as you can see, I have started out on a popular job hunting page. There are several popular job hunting sites out there right now. From time to time, the most popular ones sort of change and turn over. Right now, as I'm recording this, one of the more popular online job hunting websites is Indeed.com. So you can just go to Indeed.com in your browser, and you can see that it has a pretty simple interface here. We can look for a particular kind of job or a particular company, and we can tell the job search website where we want to look. So one way that we can do that is, let's just demonstrate how this would look if we looked for a job as a cashier. So I'll type in cashier. We're in Asheville, North Carolina, and find jobs. And you can see that several results have come up here. You'll also see, once we've done this search, that you can narrow down your search parameters or expand them out. So for example, right now it's looking within 15 miles of Asheville, and if we wanted to extend that out, if you were willing to travel farther for a job, you could extend that. It also gives you an option to set up email alerts. So if you found a job search that you wanted to look for and keep up to date with, you could enter your email address here. And then you could also tell it things like job type, that you're only interested in a full-time job. And so then let's say this one right here, this cashier job at the Home Depot in Woodfin, say you were interested in learning more about that, you could click here and it would open up information about the job and how to apply to it. Sometimes you can apply directly from the Indeed website, and sometimes it will have a link that will send you to the company's website. So one thing that I also like to do when I'm showing people how to do job searches on Indeed or other similar job websites is you don't have to put in a particular job. You could also put in something like entry level and find jobs. And so if you were just starting, wanting to start out in a particular job or industry, you can see that there are all kinds of entry-level jobs listed here. So that's Indeed. Another popular job website right now is Monster. It works in a very similar way. You can see here, you can put in, again, a job title or a phrase like entry level or office work or something like that, and you can also choose a location. So let's say mechanic, and you want to look in Hendersonville, North Carolina. We'll do a search. And you can see the results are fairly similar. You have a list of jobs over here. And then if you click on one in particular, it will give you more information about it over here. And they also have on Monster those same sorts of filters and ways to narrow down or expand out what you're looking for. If you click here under filter, you can see you can do that same thing where you can look a little bit further out or closer in, that you can look in surrounding areas, that you can tell the site that you're looking for either only full-time or only part-time. And then it will give you your updated list of jobs. So those are two popular commercial sites. There is also a site run by the state of North Carolina called NC Works. And there are lots of really great things to look for on this website. But one of the things that you can do is you can find a job. So let's click on that. And then you can see it works in a pretty similar way. Let's try the same search that we did before. So let's do cashier and we'll search. And then you get a list of jobs and also locations. When you're on this site, you can change the way that these are listed. So for example, if you wanted to sort this list by location, you could click on location. And you can see now that it's in alphabetical order by the town that it's in. You could also do the same thing by salary or the date that it was uploaded or last modified, all sorts of things that you can do in here. One of the other nice things about the NC Works website is that they don't just have jobs listed. Let's go back to that main page. They also have all kinds of resources down here. So for example, some resources about creating a resume, education and training kinds of things. If you're a veteran, they have a special veterans portal over here. And you can see, because we're in the middle of all of this difficulty with COVID-19, they have COVID-19 unemployment insurance information. So they update this pretty frequently, and you can see all kinds of really great resources on here to help you find a job. Another thing that I'd like to suggest that people do is go directly to the website of an employer that you're interested in. So for example, pretty frequently in my job, I get people asking me, how do you get a job with the county? So I'm going to come over here to Buncombe County's website. You can see I'm at buncombecounty.org. And if you wanted to see what county jobs were available, you would click on I want to, and then under apply for, click on job openings. And so you can see there are a few job openings right now. There's some featured ones up at the top. And then if you scroll down a little bit further, you can see some different job openings here. So let's, for example, click on this one, Language Access Coordinator. So now that I've clicked on that title, we can get a little bit more information about what this job is about, what kind of qualifications you need for it, and salary range and other things like that. Another large employer in the area is Ingalls. So on a site like this, you can go directly to the company's website. In this case, it's inglesmarkets.com. And a lot of times there will be a link called careers or work with us or something like that. So for this one, it's careers and it's up at the top. You can click there. And you can see there are different categories where you can apply for a job. And so here you go. You can see all the different jobs available with Ingalls in our region. And you can also, again, narrow it down. Like, for example, if you were interested in working in the bakery, you could type in, bakery here. If you were interested in working as a cashier, you could type in cashier. And you can also type in your zip code. So let's try 28801. And it will give us lots of different options in our area. Mission Hospitals is another large employer in the area, so I'd like to show their website too. This is them, and you can see again up at the top here they have an option called Careers. So we'll click on that. And so again, you can see you can do a search at the top, or you can click on a general area of work and interest. One other thing that I want to point out right now while we're talking about this is that, again, we know a lot of people are out of a job, waiting for a job to come back. I wanted to tell you guys about the One Bunkum Fund. So the One Bunkum Fund is a community-sponsored fund that gives grants to both individuals and small businesses. So this is the website where you can learn more about it and where you can apply, onebunkum.org. So if we scroll down a little bit, you can see some information about different categories where people can apply. So here's the one for individuals. Here's the one for locally owned small businesses. So you can read more about both of those. And you can also apply for that on this site. Okay, so now we've talked about some ways to find jobs on the internet, either through job hunting websites or by going directly to the company. And so now what we're going to do is I'm going to talk a little bit about filling out an application. So I have a site that I like to go to or tell people to go to for practicing this sort of thing. It's actually a website that is run out of the state of Massachusetts, but it has some really great things on here where you can practice filling out a job application and see the kinds of things that you might have to fill in when you start a job application. So one thing that you want to do before you start your job application is you want to be as prepared as possible ahead of time. So what that means is getting together a list of your past jobs and some basic information that you might need about those jobs. For example, what your title was, your supervisor's name, how much you made, how long you worked at that location. And sometimes we don't have all of that information, especially if it's for a job that has happened that we were at a long time in the past, but the more accurate information you can give, the better. So before you start your job application, try to get as much of that information together as you can. The next thing to do would be to read over the form and see what kinds of things it's asking for. So if we're looking at this sample job application form, you can see it's asking for some basic things like the date, your name, your address, ways that they can get in contact with you. And then if we continue down, let's go to the next page. And you can see that one of the things they'll often ask for is your past educational experience. If you earned a degree, what kind of degree it was, if you served in the military, when that was. And then it will usually start asking you for specifics about your past jobs. So this is a great site to go to if you want to practice filling out a job application. Type in MASSHIREHIOLYOKE.org/online-app. And it should take you straight there. If you can't find that, if it's not taking you directly to that website, you can try searching for careerpointma.org online job application practice, and that should that first result should bring you to this page. So some other things to remember when you're filling out a job application, try to answer all the questions as completely and correctly as you can. Try to focus on what you have done and not necessarily what you haven't done. So for example, if you were out of work because you were caring for a family member, focus on the fact that you were caring for that family member, not that you were out of work. Or if you were out of work and doing training programs, focus on the fact that you were doing those training programs. And then also frequently a job application will ask for references. It's always a good idea to let your references know beforehand, before an employer might call them. It's always nice for them to have a heads up that somebody's going to be calling so that they can make sure when that person calls to devote the right amount of time to it, but also so that, maybe they can pull out their past records and have information about you fresh in their minds, such as, oh, she was wonderful, she worked here for 3 years, as opposed to having that person rifle through and saying, yeah, I remember her, but I don't remember exactly when she worked here. And so then another thing that you want to do is after you have finished filling out the application, you want to read back over it and make sure that you haven't missed anything or misspelled anything, and that generally everything looks good. Okay, so now we're going to talk about resumes. So first we're going to talk about some general principles of resumes, some do's and don'ts. I'm going to show you some examples of good and bad resumes, and then I'm going to show you some ways that you can put together your own resume. So let's start with these resume do's and don'ts. So first off, something we already talked about, put your best foot forward, highlight your best qualities. Again, if, for example, you're straight out of school, maybe your education is the strongest thing on your resume, and so maybe you want to put that at the top. If you have a long work history or a really good work history, you may want to lead with that. If you were in the military, you might want to feature that by putting it closer to the top of your resume. There are a number of correct ways to do a resume, and no matter what, you want to lead with the strongest thing about you and your work history. You also want to make sure that your resume includes your current contact information, not an old phone number or email address. You don't want it to be too long. Ideally, it should be 1 page. Sometimes it can go over to 2 pages, especially if you have a particularly long work history. But generally anything more than a page, people will start to get overwhelmed and not be able to take in everything that you've put down. You want to use simple regular fonts, nothing super fancy. Usually you want your resume to be in black and white. Sometimes it's okay to have, maybe a single dark color like a blue or something like that. But don't make your resume multicolored unless you are a graphic designer and you're trying to, stand out with your beautiful graphic design on your own resume. But for the rest of us, keep it simple. Black and white is best. Usually you want to use a 10 to 12 point font. That's generally the range where most people can read what you've written fairly easily. If it gets smaller, then it can be difficult for people to read. It's totally fine if your name or things in the header are a little bit bigger. That's pretty standard for resumes, as you'll see. You want to use the regular margins. Don't make your margins super narrow or super wide. In general, you want to list your work experience chronologically with your most recent job first. There are exceptions to every rule, and there may be times where you might want to list the jobs that are most relevant to the current job that you're applying to first, but for the most part, you would list them chronologically. Don't forget about volunteer experience. Memberships in professional organizations, things like that can be really great and make your resume stand out. And we talked about this a little bit already, but you want to tailor your resume to the job that you're applying for. So for example, if you have some past work experience in a field, but then maybe back in high school you worked in an ice cream shop or something like that, that's not really relevant to the job that you're currently applying to. You don't have to put that ice cream shop on your past resume. Unless you're applying for an ice cream shop job now or some other job where that would be relevant. So you do want to have your most recent job information on there, your most recent jobs that you've worked on there, but it is okay to tailor your resume a little bit to show that you have relevant skills or relevant work experience in the area that you're applying for. And then again, just like the job application, you want to proofread your resume before you send it to your employer to again make sure there are no typos or wrong phone numbers or anything like that. So let's talk a little bit about don'ts. So don't use multiple different fonts or fonts that are hard to read. Going back to that do one, try to keep it as simple as possible. You don't need to put clip art or pictures of yourself in there. Hopefully that should not influence your employer's decision to hire you or not, whether or not they've seen, a picture of you. You don't include personal information, unless, like your marital status or your hobbies, unless those hobbies are relevant to your job. So, for example, my husband and I foster sick cats for the Humane Society, and my husband several years ago was trying to change careers and wanted to go into animal care, and so on his resumes he would put down that we fostered cats, because even though that's not an official job that he was paid for, it was something that was relevant to the jobs that he was applying for in animal care. Don't write big blocks of text. That's hard for people to read and absorb, so try to keep it simple and short. And then finally, don't exaggerate anything, skew anything, or make anything up. You want to present an accurate representation of yourself on your resume, because hopefully you're going to be the right fit for the job that you're applying for. And you want to make sure that you can really do all of those things that you'll need to do in your new job. So those are some basic do's and don'ts. And with those in mind, let's go look at some examples of good and bad resumes. So here's an example of a pretty standard good resume. Sorry, it's a little blurry there. So you can see this person has used one pretty standard font throughout their resume. You can see it's generally in a regular font size that's fairly easy for people to read, except for the name. The name's a little bit bigger. And then you can see that this person led with their education, they did a little summary about themselves, and then they went right into their work experience, skills, and then they put some activities down here that might be related to the job that they are applying for. And don't take this good resume example as all good resumes must have a section that say career interest and summary of qualifications. Those things are not necessary. They're fine. There are, again, a lot of good ways to put together a good resume. This is just one example of a good one. Okay, so now let's look over at a not so good resume. So in this one, you can see a lot of the things that we talked about before. This person's used a lot of different fonts, which doesn't make it look the most professional. She's put some clip art in here. That's a very nice clip art flower, but it does not convince me that she is super professional. And so it doesn't really add anything to the resume. You can see here she's also put some things down that aren't really necessary. She's put her marital status and whether she has children and how her health is and what her nationality is. None of those things should matter to your employer. Your employer shouldn't be picking you based on what your marital status is and how many children you have, or even what your health is. That should not be any of their business. And then you can see one other thing to look out for is, go back up to the top there. One other thing to look out for is that when you're sending an employer your resume, you want to think about your email address and whether that email address makes you sound professional. So for example, here in this bad resume example, she has hotbabe@gmail.com as her email address, which might be totally fine for friends, but maybe not so great for if you're trying to get a job. So this is our not so great resume. Okay, so the last thing that I want to talk to you about today is some ways to make your own resume. So I'm going to go back over here for a minute. This is a website called NC Live. If you have a library card, you have access to this website. So on the NC Live website, you'll see here there is an area called Career Development. We can click on that. And then you'll see several different resources that you can use down here. There's, for example, one called Cypress Resume, where you can use a tool to make a resume. One that I like to point people to is the Testing and Education Reference Center. If you're not signed in to NC Live at this point, it will prompt you to sign in with your library card number and your PIN. Usually your PIN is the last 4 digits of your telephone number. So now that we're in here in this Testing and Education Reference Center, you can see there are all kinds of categories here. And actually, one of the other fantastic things about this website is that you can take practice tests for different sorts of things, both for high school and college tests, but also for different vocations. So let's go here to career, and here to create a resume. Resume builder. Looks like they are launching a new tool. After, it looks like May 31st, Resume Builder, they're going to retire it, and they've got a new tool here called Visual CV Resume Creator for us to use. So it will prompt you to log in. This is where you can make a free account. If you don't already have one, you can sign up. Let's see. And so you can see I am signed in here, and it will give you some tools to build a resume. So we'll click Add Resume right here. And you can see it will walk you through the process of making a resume. You can see here I've got the address of the East Asheville Library on there, where I used to work, and hopefully we'll be working again soon after it is done being renovated. So another place where you can go to make your own resume is a site called Canva. It's canva.com. This is not affiliated with the library in any way. It's just a public site. And there is a paid version of Canva, but there's also a really great free version of it. So you can sign up for a free account and go into Canva. And when you're signed in, this is the page that you'll see. We can start by doing a search, and we'll do resume. And so you can see here there are a lot of different templates that you can start out with doing a resume. And so you can see a little bit of what we were talking about before, that maybe, there's one or two colors that people are using. And generally it will be black and white unless somebody is, in sort of a graphic design career or something like that. So if you find one that you like, say this one, you can click on it. Let's zoom in a little bit. And so then you can see it has all the components of the resume, and you can go in and fill these things out so that it matches you. You can go in and change the name. You can go in and change the email address and the mailing address and phone. If there's something on there that you that's on there that you don't have, you can take it out. So for example, if you don't have a website, which most of us don't, you can remove that website. And then you can go in and put your own work experience in here. Just type over what is already there, and it will generally look pretty nice and be well laid out and impress the person that you are sending your resume to. So then one last thing that I'd like to show you is that you can also make a resume in Microsoft Word, which is a pretty common program that a lot of us have on our computers. So what you do is you open Microsoft Word, as I have right here. You are going to go over here to where it says More Templates. Your version of Microsoft Word may be a little bit different than the one that I'm using on my computer, but somewhere on this screen when you first launch Microsoft Word, you should see an option that says Templates. So let's click on that. And then right down here, you'll see there's a search box. So we're going to put resume in the search box. And then what it will do is it will give us lots of different options for templates for resumes, the same way that we saw on Canva. So you can look through and try to find one that you think you might like to use. Let's maybe pick this simple one right here. And we'll create. And then we'll do the same thing that we did in Canva. Sometimes it's a little bit easier in Microsoft Word than it is in Canva. So you just, again, type over what's already there. So we can change this here. Use the library's address again. And again, you don't have to use all of this. This is just sort of a starting place for you. So for example, if you don't want to put an objective into your resume, you don't have to have one. That's just, a common thing that is sometimes nice to have. If you want to take it out, you can highlight it and delete it. And then you go in and it's telling you what to put in down here. So it tells you the dates to and from, where to put your job title, the company name, and then this is about the amount of text that you might want to have there, maybe 2 or 3 lines explaining what that job was, what your major duties and accomplishments were at that job. So I hope this information was helpful for you and that your job search goes well. If you'd like more information about the library's resources and programs, please visit us at www.buncombecounty.org/library.